The webinar is now broadcasting. People are joining. Wonderful. We did it. Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to, you guys are all the early birds. We're going to wait, a couple of minutes past the hour to get started, so just stay tuned. So where are you guys each from originally?
I'm from Brazil.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm from India. I've been here too long now, 22 years.
Oh, wow. You broke up there, but you said in India originally? Is that what you said?
Yeah, India, yeah.
That's awesome.
Where
Hi,
about?
everyone. Welcome, everyone, to this webinar. We're going to give it a minute or two and let people join, so just hang tight, and then we'll get started.
I miss India. I worked there for a while.
I'm from a place called Pune. It's next to Mumbai, Lorenzo.
Yeah, I worked in Mumbai, in Delhi.
Oh, nice.
I miss really much. Yeah.
I've never been. Yeah, where in Brazil are you from, Lorenzo?
Rio. I was born in Rio. But I moved to US for 14 years ago.
Have you been to Carnival?
Sorry?
Have you been to Carnival?
Yes, but I prefer more quiet. I'm an atypical Brazilian, if I can say that.
Fair enough. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're going to give it another minute as people continue to join, and then we will get started. So just hang tight wherever you are in the world. So what's your guys' favorite ice cream flavors?
Rocky Road is the best.
Rocky Road. Rahul?
Vanilla.
Vanilla?
Vanilla.
Oh, get out of here. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. We're going to wait 30 more seconds as people continue to join, and then we'll get started. Thank you to the eager early birds. You'll all get the worm today. Don't worry. Rocky Road. Rocky Road, what is that? That's like marshmallows and nuts and stuff?
Yes.
And like chocolate chunks, I think.
There's a bunch of chunks there. It's like it.
But
I don't take it very often.
Probably a good habit to not have it very often.
Where do you get it, Lorenzo? Do you get it in Häagen-Dazs, or is it?
Ben and Jerry's, Häagen-Dazs. I never buy those big pints.
Oh, interesting.
I love Ben & Jerry's. All right, cool. We're at 12:02 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have a few people continuing to trickle in, but let us begin. My name is Michael Weiss with AI4. Welcome to this edition of an AI4 webinar. We've partnered with Innodata for this one. And the topic, which you are all aware, is the art and science of data annotation. Data is obviously key to any successful AI ML project. And so today is all about the data. So without any further ado, I'm going to kick it off to Rahul from Innodata and Lorenzo from Société Genérale to get us started. Rahul, take it away. I'll be here if you need anything.
Great. Thanks, Michael. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. I'm excited to present our thoughts around art and science of data annotation. And I'm privileged to be joined by Lorenzo from Société Genérale. Little bit of my introduction. My name is Rahul Singhal. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Innodata. Innodata is a leading data transformation, data annotation company, been in the business for 30 years, and are really focused on helping create clean label data sets for our clients. A little bit of my background: I spent majority of my career at IBM, and last 4 years I led the IBM Watson platform, the product stack around data, vision, speech, and really got to see firsthand the need and requirement for clean annotated data sets that can truly transform AI models. And then spent 2 years doing a startup called equals3.ai, which was again built up by IBM Watson, trying to solve a search problem in marketing data. And again, as I said, privileged to be joined by Lorenzo, who's the managing director at Société Genérale. I'm going to turn it over to Lorenzo to give his introduction before we get started.
Thank you very much, Rahul. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation. And I've been with industry for 25 years in banking, in the finance industry. But I started my career back in the 80s, working with machine learning, artificial intelligence. So my first model was in 1988. At that time, was just a very academic and was a very restricted topic for not that many people, and the conferences were not that popular. So we didn't have webinars, for instance, was something that on the topic was something that was unthinkable. So, and after that, after doing machine learning for more than 30 years, I found that it was a topic that wouldn't go much further. And then in '95, I finished my PhD and the topic, and then I started working in the finance industry, and now I feel that more and more, and it's getting inevitable. The world will be dominated by AI and machine learning, and as I tell my kids, the future will be with this, and then we have to know how to deal with that, how to live in this new environment. And I think it's important, and webinars like this give us the opportunity to exchange ideas and see how difficult that is in order to come up with a meaningful use of AI and meaningful and ethical use of AI. And that's why data is extremely important. And thanks for the invitation.
Great. So Lorenzo, again, I think what we'll do here today is really, when you think about the life cycle of building an AI model, we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about the importance of clean annotated data pre-training a model, and then we're going to talk about how do you take an clean annotated data and build a model, humans in the loop approach. Why is it required, and how do you keep on training the data? And then talk about some best practices and use cases that we have seen from our clients and Lorenzo has seen in his day-to-day work, and really make it as interactive as possible. We'd love to take questions from you and try to, conversationally, we'll be looking at questions and try to answer questions as and when they show up.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The topic is couldn't be more important. Data is fundamental, and as we all say, garbage in, garbage out. I think it's a saying that is valid elsewhere, and here in AI is key, because if we're learning, if you don't have a good training, if you train your machine, or even humans, if we train ourselves with wrong data, in the end of the day, we're going to use it and test it in real life, it's going to be wrong or biased or even unethical. So we have to be very careful when we are labeling your data, when we are annotating the data. And that's why this is extremely important. And I think it's very, the timing is perfect.
Great. So getting started, right? I think this comes from Gartner, and when you think about the total market for AI products and services, it's expected to be 191 billion by 2024. But at the same time, 85% of those projects are expected to fail. Now, when you think about the magnitude of what we are talking about here, Gartner is projecting almost $150 billion of that spend will never come to fruition and will never see the light of the day in terms of productivity benefits or the value that was going to be created. That's a tremendous waste that we can that Gartner's projecting. And if I and it's when you think about the leaders in the industry, and I'd love to I won't read through the quotes, but Arvind Krishna, senior VP of IBM, Watson Cloud and Cognitive Software, publicly came out and talked about how the top reason why their clients are canceling AI projects are all related to data. Michelle from Forrester talked about lack of subject matter expertise as a prereq why these projects may fail. And Michael Conlin from Chief Data Officer talks about, well, large volumes of data that requires clean and annotated data sets, crucial for making this AI real. So we've been serving the industry, the data industry, for the last 25 years, and we tend to agree with them, right? So when we think about what we are seeing from our clients and the investment the clients are making, our perspective is scarcity of semantically enriched data, which could be structured or unstructured or clean, accurate data. But more importantly, subject matter experts who really understand the content and can annotate the content in the right manner is absolutely critical for these AI projects. So some of the things that a lot leading experts are talking about are companies that are going to spend 5 times more time and energy in annotating and creating clean data sets are going to be more successful in this in getting AI and getting that benefit of the spend that they're making on AI to be real. So Lorenzo, I'd love to get your perspective on some use cases that you are seeing in the financial services industry where AI is being deployed. Could you talk about some use cases that you're seeing and talk about some how you are going about them?
Yes, so I understand that my voice is going in and out, so I'm trying to speak closer to the mic, so please let me know if it's better. So the financial industry is an extremely regulated environment. So in order to get your model approved, you have to go through a very sequenced and a very systematic approach. So you have to go through a model validation, and you have to go to an approval. And me as head of model validation, I have to be taking this into account. So the model has to be conceptually sound. The model has to be approved to implemented correctly, and the data has to be pristine, has to be as good as possible. So in terms of applications of machine learning in the financial industry, because of this highly regulated environment, the applications that we've seen are the ones that are supporting decisions. So if you have a final decision using machine learning only or artificial intelligence only, it has to be explainable. So there are 2 very clear laws, one in Europe and one here is being passed through the Senate, that models, any kind of algorithms must be explainable. So in financial industry, as it is extremely regulated, you have to be explained, it has to be explaining your models. And when you start with the data, annotating data, you have to understand the labeling, how this is done, and how unbiased that is. And then we have to take care of 4 elements usually. One is the imbalance. So the data that you're using for training in financial industry has to be imbalanced. So that's to be something that has to be treated for. Also, the second part is when you talk about missing data, also noise and anomalies. So when you do a good annotation, you have to take into account all of these elements so that the model is unbiased in the end of the day. So in terms of applications, we have in compliance, it's a good one. We see for the detection of false positives in anti-money laundering. We have tests of ensemble models that are used for detection of these false positives and reducing the time that you have to process these false positives. So the number one problem there is when you're annotating the data, you have to be able to come up with the data that is it's unbiased and also done by experts in the topic. And there are two instances that you have to do. One is to train your data in the first time. So you have to have a set of experts in compliance in the topic, so that when you annotate the data is as good as possible. So it goes all the 4 elements that I mentioned. And also when you're doing the ongoing monitoring of this model, when you want to test stability of this model through time, you have to ask all these annotators or these experts to come up with a re-annotation of the data. So
Lorenzo, so
yeah.
Sorry to cut you off. We need to just switch your audio real quick because we're getting a bunch of people writing in. So it's going to be very easy. Do you have your cell phone on you?
Yes.
All right. So what you're going to do, 30-second technical change, everyone. So next to the mute button, do you see that on your screen?
Yep.
Click the up arrow. And then click switch to phone audio. Do you see that option? You muted yourself, Lorenzo, but I think you're probably typing into your phone, if I had to guess. He is. Thumbs up. Okay. Thanks, everyone, for the patience.
Hello?
All right. That's your phone?
Yes, that's my phone. Sorry for that.
It sounds awesome. We're back, everyone. Woo! Okay, so Lorenzo, maybe just someone did ask if you could just start over a little bit, just a bit of a synopsis.
Yeah,
of what
sure.
you said. Okay, thanks.
So
have fun,
I'll start from the beginning then. So the fact is that here in the financial industry, it's an extremely regulated environment, right? So it's an extremely regulated industry. So in order to get your model approved, AI or any other model, you have to go through a very detailed and thorough process. So you have to go through a sounding test of your model. You have your good data. It has to be implemented correctly, and then it has to be used as intended. So it's not different with artificial intelligence, and that's why when you're doing your annotation, your labeling of your data, you have to pay attention to usually 4 things that we get into account: the imbalance, noise, missing, and anomalies. So it's very important when we are annotating the data that you capture all of these, so that your model, in the end of the day, is unbiased, so you can use it as intended. And one application that is been very common now these days in the banking industry is related to compliance. So when you're trying to find or detect false positives in your anti-money laundering process, machine learning, usually it's an ensemble model that's used, could be very powerful to detect these false positives and then eliminate those, so that the process goes smoothly and then it's less costly. So then the idea here is that, okay, so if you have good data, how to annotate that? So how to annotate good data? So you have to rely on experts. There's no other way that you can do besides relying on experts. So you have to ask experts on compliance and anti-money laundering to annotate the data, to label your data. And extremely difficult because there are two instances that I personally need the data to be annotated. The first one, and you're labeling it for the first time. So you have your clients, so client base, and you want to assess them based on their risk, financial crime risk, for instance, in this case. You have to be able to look at the client, unbiasedly speaking, and then go and classify this client. You have to classify all these clients once, and then because of the ongoing monitoring procedure, and you want to test the stability of this model, you have to label this again in the future. So you have to bring these experts back. So it's an extremely costly process. So, and then there's a very strict protocol to label this data. That's something that Rahul is going to talk about as well, because if we miss this protocol, the noise is there, the data will be missing, there will be imbalance, and then there will be anomalies. Everything that we don't want in your database. And then I won't be able to approve the model.
Yeah, so, and this brings us to a really interesting point that we at Innodata are seeing from a lot of our customers, right? A lot of our customers come back and talk to us about what's the best practice of data annotation. And what we are seeing is it's a 3-pass annotation, right? So we tend to find that, as I think Lorenzo was mentioning, we have 2 annotators doing blind annotation of the classification or of the attributes, and then an arbiter, and then a very clearly defined inter-annotator agreement that you're adhering to. So Lorenzo, is that what you are seeing as a best practice when you are?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So
looking at your looking at classification and tagging. Yeah.
And then it's the annotation of experts, and then defining precisely the protocol. So how many annotators, how many experts you're going to use? If you're going to use an odd number of experts, if you're going to take out the extremes, so that the anomalies are addressed. So all these elements are extremely important when you're labeling the data, when you're annotating the data.
Great. All right, moving forward. It's a poll time, and
poll time. All right, poll is launched.
So this is an interesting question. What's your thoughts, Lorenzo? What do you think what the results will be? Will we see our people here on the webinar talking 100,000, 100 million, 10,000, ABC?
I'll go for the no, sure, not sure. Here, if I have to tell a number here, I think it will be more than 100. But that's because I'm a part of the problem. But I don't know. It's very hard to assess.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the answer here. I think it's going to be 100,000 and more. But you were right.
There you go. There you go. Not sure. Yeah, I'm not surprised because it's something that's it's an old new concept, right? So it's an old new concept that to do to spend in data annotation is something that is not common. But in industries like the medical industry, when you do all imaging, and then in my previous slides when I did some models based on satellite image, it's key.
Yeah. Yeah. So moving in, right? So what are the types of annotation and the types of annotation we are seeing from a lot of our customers, right? So we are seeing at a very broad level, we're seeing 4 different types of annotation modalities, right? So we're seeing sequences, which is lots of data, tends to be time series data, which starts from the left and has lots of time elements related to it, and then we are labeling data on a time element. We see a lot of categorization labeling, use cases around categorization where customers are looking to do classification of documents. We also tend to see a lot of customers from a challenge perspective, and I'd love to get Lorenzo's perspective around multi-labeling, right? Where you have an ontology and then you have multi labels associated with it. We tend to see segmentation where object utilization, especially in autonomous car driving and other types of use cases, or parts of speech, right, where you have speaker 1, speaker 2, and being able multiple speakers and segment those speakers, being able to have the models trained to understand different languages, and then finally mapping around summarization use cases. So Lorenzo, I mean, I'm assuming you're seeing a lot of use cases, again, especially in the compliance. I know we've done some work around that. Multi-label annotation tends to be, is a challenge. How are you thinking about that problem, and are you seeing those kinds of annotation needs?
So if you go one by your I think we can cover all your types of challenges. The first one is the sequencing. When you have panel data, it's a classic, and it mixes sequencing and categorization. So you have panel data for credit approval, credit process, for instance. If you want to have a credit model or even a compliance model, sequencing and categorization are key, because you have to see how your data looks like today, and then something changed or something that you want to detect changed through time, and then time series sequences is key. So that's extremely challenging, because you have to bring the experts in 2 different moments in time. The other one is categorization. As I said, multi-labels adds one factor, which is the imbalance. So there's a big risk that we see here when we have multiple categories. So we have high, medium, low, or even 4 categories or 5 categories. The tendency is that the extremes are kind of neglected, and they have to. That's why the protocol is extremely important, because then when you're doing your modeling, you have an imbalanced data, and everything else in your model can be biased. So that's a big issue.
Great. And so when you think about annotation, the types of annotation across the industry is around text documents. We're seeing a lot of customers, especially sophisticated customers. We tend to serve 3 primary domains: pharma, life sciences, and healthcare. And a lot of NLP models are being created in around those 4 annotation models. A lot of image annotation. We're seeing a lot of customers solving some really interesting problems around using images. So we have customers who are looking to solve problems around easy passes, right, where they're using image recognition technologies to automate toll processing or facial race, where they're looking to do analysis on different medical conditions. We have customers who are talking about video, extracting metadata from video for search purposes, and then audio files. It's a very interesting, lots and lots of work going on around autonomous car and being able to have, as you would see, Siri and the Alexa of the world trying to address those problems. So now we're seeing all kinds of annotation needs. Lorenzo, in your world, what types of document types are you seeing predominantly that you're working on?
It depends on the problem. So we see regulations. So in the financial industry, as I said, it's great in regulations. We love a regulation, and I think that's how it should be. And the idea now is with the increase in availability of data, and also the computer power and the new technologies that we've seen, the use of old new technologies, so to speak, because the same convolutional neural networks and recursive neural networks that I studied 30 years ago have been reused now for natural language processing, for image processing. So all that you're talking about when you have text and tagging and then do parts of speech and then do all the natural language processing, it's extremely important. If you don't do your tagging correctly or your annotation correctly, again, it's exactly the same thing as the compliance problem. The learning is jeopardized. So the learning is jeopardized, and then when you're using the model, it's not going to be used as intended. So it's hard to explain the model itself. So we've been going to deep neural networks, convolutional neural networks, or RNN. It's very hard to explain those. It is extremely important that you have this the annotation squared in the first place. So that's why tagging and text, image, we see all of these cases.
Yeah, which brings us to a really interesting modality that we see around data annotation, right? So yeah, this is not a new industry. Lots of players in the market. We find most of the players in the market tend to use the crowd, right? And what we hear from our customers is some of the challenges of using crowd, right, is from a complex data set perspective, they're not seeing the quality that they would expect. And the crowd tends to lack a deep domain expertise and not being able to have deep understanding. And again, at Innodata, we've taken a very different approach where we believe that 99.5% accuracy on a clean data set is absolutely critical on the complex data types like complex regulation, as well as SEC laws that we are annotating, or we are doing a lot of work around healthcare domain or insurance industry or ISDA and derivatives contracts. I love your perspective, Lorenzo, on what have you seen in the market in terms of when you have built models, how have you used the crowd, have you used in-source? What's been your perspectives on this?
No, it has to be highly trained professionals. So it has to be experts in the topic. There are two. I'm going to separate this into two pieces. One is for a banking regulated application. That's something that has to be with a very clear protocol, with a very highly skilled and trained professionals. It's extremely costly, and then it's one part of the equation. The second part, it's also something that I do on academic world. It's research. So when you're doing research, it's a different story. So you have from time to time you don't have the budget to pay for annotation. So and then in my previous lives when I was studying agricultural finance, for instance, and you have all these models that use satellite images to predict production, and you have to label that, and then you have your students and your research team to do that for you. So, and those are two different things, and one is for academic purposes, and you have to have a very the protocol there is different for publication, and the other one is for use in a highly regulated system. So those are two different things. And in my case here in the bank, I have no choice. I have to have a very clear protocol. The protocol has to be approved by my team, and yeah, you have to have experts.
So another poll question.
All right, I'm on it. Poll is launched.
So I'm betting on both here as the answer.
Yeah, that one. The not sure want. I think it's going to be in house.
Let's see.
Yeah, we do outsourcing as well, so we do both. We do both here, but.
Yeah, and I think let's once the answer comes back, let's take. I know there are a few questions on the Q&A poll. Let's take a few of the questions.
No, both.
Hey, we both were right, 45%. Which is what I would have expected. So let's take a few questions, right? One of the questions I saw was around what tools do you use for annotation? So I'll take it, and then I'd like Lorenzo to add to it. So we use a lot of proprietary tools that we at Innodata have built. One of the learnings that we found very early on is one size fit all workbenches and annotation tools don't work, right? So when you're annotating data for regulatory compliance, a lot of our clients are asking us to annotate data where we are actually acquiring the content. The content tends to be in image formats, right? So the first step around even getting to before you can have subject matters experts annotate the data is extracting and making it into it tends to be in an image form. Workbenches that tend to convert those data types, image formats or PDF images into extractable PDF images. And then we have workbenches that take that data, and then we have subject matter experts being able to annotate it. So we have built our own workbenches. On some other types, like we do a lot of work around, say, image annotation, the volume tends to be very high. And we found there are some workbenches, third-party workbenches. A lot of our clients have their own workbenches that they've built, and we either log into there, or we have our own workbench, which allows us to do large-scale annotation. So I think one of the things we found, at least in our experience, is you need to have different workbenches being able to do different types of annotation, and one size fit all is not going to work. Lorenzo, what are you finding? Because again, I find that question asked a couple of times from our customers, and some consulting firms who work in variety of data types came back to us with very similar need, like have that workbench capability, with customized workbench.
Yeah, so in our case, I've seen, not in my firm, but I've seen elsewhere exactly as you described. So I totally see what you're saying and your point. Here, it's extremely labor intensive. We don't have a tool per se. So what we do is more, how can I say, it's more artisanal still. So, and it's, to give an example, we had a model that we had to label around 1,000 clients in 4 categories for financial crime, and it was extremely labor intensive. And the protocol required at least three assessors, 3 annotators, and then we had to do blind tests, and then a year from now we have to reassess again for data stability. So all this process is extremely labor intensive. We don't have a tool yet that we can say, well, that's the tool that we're using for labeling. There are some databases that we buy already for different types of users. So we buy the solutions. That's why when we use both, there's one internal, then one external, depending on the usage.
Got it. Yeah. So I thought this might be interesting, and I think Lorenzo already talked about some of the use cases he's seeing. Some of our customers are looking at in the financial services world. Risk tends to be a really interesting use case. A lot of AI technologies being deployed to solve regulatory risk problem. We're seeing in the retail bank space a lot of digital assistant work around chatbot, a lot of process automation work around mortgage processing, lease abstraction, and then compliance and wealth management. Those tend to be use cases that we are seeing some of our customers come back to. Anything else you would add here, Lorenzo, from that is not captured here, which you think is places where banks and the financial services might be spending AI and doing use cases in AI?
No, I think you touched all of them. Yeah, so in terms of cognitive automation, so you see that we're leveraging AI for cognitive automation is the big one. So that's a good type of usage that increase efficiency without having the burden of the explainability. So that's a big one.
Yeah. So let's talk about the process, right? Let's talk about the process of getting to building an AI model. And what we see, and a lot of our clients are applying it, you see raw content, and the raw content then needs to be, you need to have a domain ontology. Now, what we find is standard ontologies just are not good enough for production level use cases, right? So you have to be able to take an ontology and customize that ontology, because every use case and every, for example, in financial services case, let's say you're doing a regulatory compliance use case where you're really looking to understand, build triggers on when a law changes, what are the obligations that the bank may have to trigger. That's a really interesting use case that some of the banks are deploying AI for, but the obligations are very specific to a bank, right? They're very specific to a local geography. And that ontology that you need to create, what we find is customers tend to come with their own ontologists who actually spend time building these custom ontologies. And then taking a content labeling is, once you have an ontology, a clean ontology, you can then label the content to that ontology and then run a model to enrich that content and then build relationships between those entities or labels that you've extracted to build a knowledge graph, right? So the life cycle is, we see across where we serve the customer, where some of the customers say, hey, I just want the raw content and I'm going to do it in-house. So we serve that. But again, so for some customers, we do helping them with the ontologies and the labeling. And I find one of the questions I see, and I'm going to take that question around standardized ontologies, right? How do you standardize ontologies? Lorenzo, any thoughts on what you are seeing when you're deploying production level use cases, on your experience in taking a standard ontology and customizing it, and what tools did you use for that?
Yeah, the big one is for enterprise risk management. So in order to be able to identify and assess and manage all the risks in the organization, you have to be able to come up with a very clear taxonomy or ontology of your risks. So, and then enterprise risk management is doing this, and it will be impossible for us to have a meaningful portfolio of risks or aggregation of risk, a holistic view of risk, without having the proper domain of ontology defined for us. So that's a big one. So, and that, as I said, defines the rest. So then in terms of content labeling, if your ontology, if your structure is not defined, then the rest is useless. So that's key. And then I've seen this in enterprise risk management, compliance risk, and then every type of application in the bank that's related to regulatory environments. So different types of regulations, and as I said, how this evolves through time.
Great. So, so I just thought it'll be interesting for to take a use case. This is around ISTA contracts, right? How we have solved this problem and what that process looks like. I think it'd be interesting for our participants to see it. We get the raw content. Sometimes it's a source file. It might be a PDF. We tend to then have we converted it into an XML format, right? You convert it and convert that into an XML format. You tag it to an ontology, and this is what we were talking about, right? That ontology is really, really critical. So here at Innodata, we spent years building a 1,200 point data ontology for derivatives contract, and we then eat our own dog food, right? We took our experts, we annotated it for the ISDA and the GIMRA and the CSAs and other types of contracts to be able to then apply that to building a relationship and then have a solution that our clients use for a variety of use cases. Some of our clients are using it for search use case, right? Can I find the right obligation or within the right contract, being able to find the right clauses? Some of the clients then tend to use it for triggers, right? Can I apply, can I have the relationship, and when a net asset value of a contract goes down, I want to be able to trigger a certain margin call, right? So we find that's this pattern, and what I really wanted to illustrate the pattern is around taking an unstructured data in a different format, mapping it to an ontology, running an AI model to extract the data points to then take on different use cases. Any thoughts on that, Lorenzo? Does that resonate with how you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's so here we have
some of the use cases.
Hello. So here we do have models that that will read text and try to find context out of text. So that we have chatbots that are used for trading. We have also in a very experimental view, I've seen, not necessarily here in my firm, but I've seen academically speaking, and also in other firms, text interpretation and a text not only mining but also NLP used for predictive analytics. And that's what you're showing there is exactly how you transform a unstructured data into something that you can use for learning and for extrapolation. So that's if you don't get it right, then you're, as I said before, and I'm going to repeat, everything else is jeopardized. Rahul?
Yeah, can you hear me? Sorry, I think we're having some technology difference. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're just freezing.
All right. So again, Innodata we have experts in we have masters and doctorate. Again, a lot of subject matter experts with deep domain experience with language capability. And we've been solving problems for a variety of different data types, like legal data, patent data, scientific data, medical data with deep domain experience around different document types and images. So final poll question, Michael.
I'm on it. All right. Poll 3, launch.
All right. And I think the answer to this is going to be images.
I think it's going to be other. No, I'm kidding. All of the above. Oh, images is one that I not here in the bank. I haven't seen image yet, but in the past I used images for predictive analytics, and it's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
For agricultural finance.
Yeah, and we'll be seeing.
Yeah, for image processing.
And it was others. Interesting. It was really interesting. All right. So another topic, right, is around security, right? We find, again, we've invested a lot of money in creating private cloud data set, private cloud with SunGuard and Citrix servers, and having all the right certifications, because a lot of our clients demand it. When you're serving the needs of healthcare and HIPAA and financial services, I think having security and having the right infrastructure is really critical, which I think is really, really important. And we're seeing a lot of our clients now ask for, how do you manage your security policies? How do you manage outsource, especially when you're outsourcing it? insourcing is obviously you already have the infrastructure, but when you use an outsourced vendor, what kinds of security infrastructure would you expect your outsourcing provider or vendor to have?
Oh, we had so in order to approve a model, one of the things that we also verify is all the above. So how our data gets out of the firm. So we have a few models that some machine learning models that and annotation is done by a third party, and the communication of is key. So it's part of the model approval process to verify if you have client data being how it's being handled, because we are in a bank, right? So it's not different from other parts of the industry of our sectors, but here in the bank, trust is number one. If you are mishandling your data and your client's data, it's a huge reputation risk, and yeah, so we take it. I couldn't stress more how important that is, and you can have all the annotation perfectly done, all the 4 criteria of data quality taken care of, the best assessors ever. But if you fail in your communication security, then everything else is done. So you jeopardize your whole credibility of the whole entire program.
Great. So that brings us to the end of our what we wanted to cover. But let's take a few questions. There's some few interesting questions. I'm going to take Roger Sadler's question. How much of a negative impact in strictly regulated world in which financial services organizations operate is when it comes to AI implementation in or by those organizations?
I can take that.
Sure.
So how much of a negative impact do you think the strictly regulated, so the strictly regulated world is, there are two faces to that, of course, of everything. One challenges us to be more sustainable. So what I say here in the bank, I'm not against creativity and innovation. I'm totally for creativity and innovation, but sustainable. So we live in a very strict regulated environment. So we have the European law, the right of explanation law in Europe for the data privacy. It's a big one. We as an European bank, we have to obey to that. So every single model that is developed in the bank, regardless if it's an algorithmic model or it's a statistical model, we have to go through an explanation, a very thorough explanation of the model. It has to be explainable, especially special attention to artificial intelligence models. And now here in the US, you have the Algorithmic Accountability Act that is in the Senate, a very similar rule that if approved, it's going to be a big one for the US banks. So yes, there's a lot of impact, but I think it's more sustainable. I'm very pro the regulated environment in this sense that we can have a much more sustainable innovation in the bank.
Yeah, and I'll add my perspective. I think what we are finding, right, is explainability and transparency of data and data annotation is becoming absolutely critical, especially in highly regulated industries like financial services, right? Ability to be able to take the journey from all the way from what data set did you use for your training models, right? What data did you annotate? How was the annotation? What was the factors that led to the quality control of the annotation, and all the way to the neural network that decides and uses the model to be able to go back and say when it's predicting the right, in the case, let's say it's predicting the right data point or the right clause, can you explain it in the training data set, and is it valid, right? Having that transparency and authenticity is absolutely critical as we try to move and deploy more and more of these models. I'll have one last question, which is, I think, is an interesting question. It's a great debate. Think about all the AutoML platforms, right, where the world is moving towards synthetic data creation. What's your perspective? I love to get your perspective, and then I can add my perspective on it.
Sure. We're talking about AutoML and the pipelines.
Yeah.
I think it's great. So I've been working with AI for 30 years, and it started with only academic. Now we talk about the democratization of AI. I think it's great. I think it's an amazing thing. So we can download our AutoML and do it ourselves. Everybody in the organization is a data scientist, so to speak, has the potential to create models, predictive models, and you can hire people. It's great for the market. It's great for my students. It's great for the industry. I think it's really nice. However, goes back to my point of you have to be aware of the risks that you're taking. So you have to be aware of the risks that are under the labeling, the hyperparameter optimization, all your feature engineering. You have to be able to go step by step in your model development, and you'll be able to document everything and explain everything. So I see with good eyes. So I think democratization is good, but we have to be aware of the risks and identify and assess them as we develop the models. Because if it goes back to if it comes to me in model risk and the model is not well defined or documented, I will reject. So that's and I don't see that as being against innovation. It's being pro-sustainable innovation.
So I'll add one final thought to it. I agree with you. I love the fact of democratization of AI and ML, but I think as the old adage goes, garbage in, garbage out. You still need to have very good, clean, annotated data sets even before you can start running an AutoML model to start creating more data sets, and then being able to do explainability and transparency. So I think I see for complex issues, especially in financial services, healthcare, where small errors could have disastrous effect. I see a while before we see mass adoption of AutoML technologies in the pipeline. Would probably see it more in simpler classification kind of use cases and chatbot kind of use cases. So I know we are at the top. This has been a very engaging, very fun discussion for us. Hopefully all the participants got some value out of it. Michael, I'll turn it over to you for final closure.
Thanks so much, Rahul, Lorenzo. You guys crushed it. Epic work. Everybody, thanks so much for joining. As I mentioned in the chat, the recording and the slides will be available afterwards. There were a couple questions that didn't get answered. We'll try and answer those through email afterwards as well. And if anyone is in healthcare, feel free to come to our AI for Healthcare conference in November in New York. Everybody, Godspeed. Have an amazing week. AI with love.
Hey guys, bye.
Bye, guys.
Take care.
Take care.